Okay, so let's take notes on lines and angles. We're first going to talk about parallel lines. Parallel lines are when two or more lines that are in the same plane never intersect. So parallel lines, again, are two or more lines that are in the same plane that never intersect. Now these are similar and different from what we call skew lines. Okay. So I know a lot of you probably have heard of parallel lines before, but skew lines might be a little bit different to you. Okay. Skew lines are two or more lines that never intersect. But the key difference between that and parallel lines is that they're in different planes. Okay, so parallel lines never intersect, skew lines never intersect, but parallel have to be in the same plane. Skew can be in different planes. And we learned that perpendicular lines are lines that intersect. Okay, and form four right angles. So any questions so far on parallel, skew, or perpendicular? And lastly, parallel planes. Just like parallel lines, except these are planes that never intersect. So it's two or more planes that never intersect. Any questions? Okay, let's look at this first example here. So we need to name two sets of each kind. Now there's more than two sets, but let's just come up with two sets here. So parallel lines. Well, parallel lines have to be never touch, but be in the same plane. So if you look at this plane right here on the top, okay, two lines that are parallel would be AB and CD. So line AB and line CD, that's a set of parallel lines. Another example, okay, I can do that same plane right there, would be BC and AD. However, I want to do a different plane just to mix it up. So let's look at this plane here, naming a pair of parallel lines in that plane. I could say DH and CG. Now, skew lines, again, we said skew lines would never touch, but they have to be in different planes. So picking a line to start with, let's say AB. Okay, AB must not touch this line, but can't be in the same plane. So choosing a line in a different plane, for example, GH and AB will never touch, and they're in different planes, excuse me. So therefore, they are skew. What's another example that could happen? Well, other than A, B, and GH, let's start with another one here. Let's go with AE. AE could be skewed to BC. They'll never touch, and they're in different planes. Again, those are not the only answers that could be. There's multiple answers. Parallel planes. Parallel planes are planes that will never touch. So for instance, the plane on top, A, B, C, D, with the plane on the bottom, E, F, G, H, those will never touch. Okay, another example could be the right and left side here. This one, D, C, G, H. And that is parallel to A, B, F, E. And then lastly, perpendicular lines. These are any two lines that intersect and form 90-degree angles. So, this line here, intersecting that line right there, they're going to be forming 90-degree angle there. So you have line AD and DH. Another example could be EF with EH. Okay, so those are examples of the 4 different types of vocabulary words in this first page here. Any clarifying questions on this? Okay. Flipping over to the back side there, transversal. Okay, so transversal is when you have a line that intersects two or more lines. So looking at this diagram here, which line L, M, or N, is intersecting 2 or more lines? The transversal in this case would be line L. Because it intersects right here and right there. Okay. Now we learned in a previous lesson that there's angle relationships that are really key. This notes is just about naming those angle relationships. So you'll make sure you know which ones are corresponding, which ones are alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive. And then later on, we'll make sure that you know what is the relationships among them. Okay, whether they're congruent or supplementary. Okay, so as you look down here, we're going to talk about corresponding angles. Now, corresponding angles, again, are angles in the same position on each line. Okay, same position on each line. So generic one, if you have these 2 lines in transversal, these angles right here they're situated in the same position on each line. Okay, so there's 4 different pairs of corresponding angles. If you look up here, angle 1 and angle 5 is a pair. And another pair would be angle 3 and angle 7. Another pair would be angle 2 and angle 6. And then lastly, angle 4 and angle 8. So those make up the list of corresponding angles. Next we have is alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are when you have angles that are inside the 2 lines. So here's your 2 lines. They're inside them and on opposite sides of the transversal. So angles that are inside the 2 lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So generically it would look like when you have 2 lines in the transversal here, that would be alternate interior. Okay. There's only 2 pairs of alternate interior angles. So in this case it would be 3 and 6. And the other one would be 4 and 5. Alternate exterior. Alternate exterior is just like alternate interior, except it's on the outside of the 2 lines. Okay, so they're formed by the angles on the outside of the 2 lines on opposite sides of the transversal. So, angles that are outside the 2 lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So in this case it would be angle 1 and angle 8 and angle 2 and angle 7. Generically it would look like that. So we have corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles. The last pair is known as consecutive interior angles. Okay. Consecutive interior angles, also described as same side interior angles. This is actually what you would do to describe their location. So in other words, they're inside the 2 lines on the same side of the transversal. So if you look back here at your diagram, these 2 angles are inside the 2 lines and on the same side of the transversal. So consecutive interior angles are going to be the angles that are inside the 2 lines and on the same side of the transversal. So generically it would look like this. And in your diagram, that would be angle 3 and 5. And the other pair would be angle 4 and 6. So this makes up your 4 angle relationships that you need to know for this chapter. These angle relationships, as you learned in the previous lesson, if these first 3 are congruent, corresponding alternate interior and alternate exterior, if these relationships are congruent, then we learned that the lines here will be parallel. If they're not congruent, then the lines won't be parallel, as they're not parallel in this case. The last one, consecutive interior, we learned that those need to be supplementary to make these lines parallel here. And if they're not supplementary, then these lines will not be parallel. Okay, but we'll again dive more into that in the next lesson. But now we just really want to make sure you understand the naming of the different angle relationships. So as we flip over here to example 2, I want you to take a minute and fill out a list of all the pairs of each kind of corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive interior. So go ahead and do that by yourself. I'll give you about a minute to do that. Okay, so after you've done that, let's go over the answers here. So corresponding angles would be angle 1 and angle 3. Okay, angle 2 and angle 4. Angle 5 and angle 7. And angle 6 and angle 8. Alternate interior. Angle 2 and angle 7. Angle 3 and angle 6. Alternate exterior. Angle 1 and angle 8. Angle 4 and angle 5. And lastly, consecutive interior. You should have gotten angle 2 and angle 3. And the other pair was angle 6 and angle 7. In the next example, okay, you're going to be doing a few of these yourself. But in the next example, I want you to identify the transversal, so the line that intersects 2 or more lines with those angle relationships there. So you need to classify each pair, so it's either corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, or consecutive interior. By the way, there will be a couple of answers here from earlier in the section, which is not in this unit, vertical and linear pair, which you've learned in the past. Okay, and those will also be angle relationships that you need to know for this section. So make sure you review those. So for instance, angle 1 and angle 5. So we look here at angle 1 and angle 5. Okay, what is the line that is intersecting those two angles? Where's angle 1 really on? It's on this line right here. Angle 5 is really on this line right here. The line that intersects with both of these angles is this line right there, so that has to be your transversal. So the transversal is line N. And these angles right here are inside the two lines on opposite sides of the transversal, so that means they're called alternate interior angles. Right, alternate interior angles. Next one, angle 3 and angle 6. Well, angle 3 is on this line, and angle 6 is on this line, and the one that goes through both angle 3 and 6 is line M. That has to be your transversal. So transversal, line M, okay, and 3 and 6. Well, if these are your two lines right here, and this is your transversal, 3 and 6 are both in the same position, so thus they're called corresponding angles. I want you to take a minute and try to do C. So in C, with angle 1 and 4, you should have gotten the transversal to be line L. So the transversal line L, and 1 and 4 are outside the two lines on opposite sides of the transversal, so they are alternate exterior. Three and 4, well, that is not one of the 4 relationships we learned in this section here. Instead, 3 and 4, you should know they are vertical angles. Okay, so vertical angles are their relationship there. And 6 and 7, again, when you're next to that, forming a line right there, that means that they're forming a linear pair. And those are those relationships of that part. Okay, so what you're going to be doing now is this concludes this lesson here on angle relationships. The key is being able to identify which angles are corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive interior. And then also it's really important for you to understand the relationship between linear pairs and vertical angles, making sure you understand that they are also occurring when you have parallel lines that are intersecting. Okay,